I have a love-hate relationship with youth organized sports. On the positive side, youth sports have the potential to be so developmental. Teamwork, exercise, communication skills, learning the value of hard work, and really so much more. The benefits of getting your kids involved in some youth sport, any youth sport, can help set the stage for a lifetime of positivity. Youth sports can have a huge positive influence for kids in so many ways. Every time you hear someone talk about the value of getting your son or daughter into a youth sport, they are right until they're not right. My son played ice hockey when he was young. That was one among several sports he played as a kid. But in ice hockey, with my encouragement and support, he eventually became an ice hockey referee. At the ripe old age of 10 years old, he was on the ice reffing ice hockey games. Now, he ref games where the players were younger than he was. In ice hockey, that meant he refed mites and squirts. Mite players are 7 and 8 years old. Squirt players are 9 and 10 years old. Now, those are some young kids. But their parents, as far as their parents were concerned, they were just young players on their way to playing in the NHL. You know, I remember standing around talking to other dads, and yes, this is almost always dads that did this, and they were seriously discussing college hockey and the possibility of their sons playing in the NHL. Now, there's a word for that, actually two words: utterly ridiculous. Any parent that believes a child long before puberty is even on the horizon, any parent that talks about playing at a highly competitive level, like college or professionally, when their son or daughter is just 10 years old or younger, is being utterly ridiculous. Now, of course, you can look at any professional athlete in any sport, and yes, they were once a kid. But to predict whether or not a child will grow and develop into a professional athlete is a little nuts when you're making that prediction when they're just 10 years old or maybe even younger. Parents dreaming about their kids' future, that's great stuff. It's fun stuff. I did it. Everyone does it. I had all kinds of thoughts and dreams about my son and what he would be doing when he was an adult. And yes, I had those thoughts and dreams when he was very young, even younger than 10 years old. But here's the thing. As a parent, your job is not to fill your son or daughter's head with pipe dreams when they're very young. That's not really very helpful or positive, since the vast majority of the time, for the vast majority of kids in the world, those pipe dreams will never come true. Your job as a parent is to develop their strengths and ready them to tackle their dreams when those dreams become, to some degree, realistically obtainable. Don't set your kids up for failure by encouraging them to focus on, realistically speaking, what is unattainable. As a parent, your focus for your son or daughter is to motivate and encourage them to do things that will help them develop in whatever sport they're playing. I've said to my son many times over the years that if you spend too much time looking so far down the road, you're likely to trip and fall over something that's right in front of you. Now, one eye can be looking to the future, should be, but most of your attention should be on the here and now. In my opinion, one of the biggest benefits of involving your kids in a youth sport is so they can learn the importance of patience, the necessity of practice and development, the value of focusing on the little things to get the big things right. Now, yes, cooperation and teamwork and all the things that are naturally a part of playing a team sport are great to learn. But in the long run, learning the importance of doing the little things over and over and over until you get really good at them, That's critically important training for adulthood. Recognizing the commitment that's necessary to improve and develop the core skills necessary to compete, developing the confidence required to compete against the best and the strongest opponents. That's the stuff that really matters. Most kids will not ever play their main sport at the professional level, and that's okay. What's not okay is when a parent spends too much time focusing on an unrealistic outcome and not focusing on helping their son or daughter develop the critically important skills that will benefit them as an adult. Dreams are great, and everyone should have them. But keeping your kids centered and focused on the important stuff should always take priority. Now, the second thing you need to do as a parent when your child starts to play a sport is pay attention. Now, that sounds silly to say, but let me tell you, I'm going to tell you a story about how a parent's lack of support and attention can completely undermine a child's development in any sport. This is firsthand experience. I watched this happen. Now, as I mentioned earlier, my son started playing ice hockey when he was just 5 or 6 years old. And there was another kid. I think the kid was a year younger than my son. He was playing at the same time. Now, for me, I actually loved watching my son's practices for the many sports he did over the years. I liked watching practices really more than the games themselves because the vibe in a practice is all about development, not about winning. And that's really very crucial for kids to learn young, very young. It's much more important than the game, whatever game they're playing. And it's a much more important lesson in life to understand that it's in practice that you can push and try new things. You take chances. In actual games, you oftentimes need to play it straight. But in practices, that's where you develop your skills. Now, back to my story. I'm at a practice watching my son and this other kid. He's not a very strong skater. He's really not a very strong hockey player at all. But in practice, they're doing a penalty shot drill. That's where a player takes the puck one-on-one with the goalie and tries to score. Now, my son's okay at this, but the other kid is basically lousy. But one time, he dekes the goalie, makes a great shot, and scores. What's the first thing he does? A kid, what do you think the first thing he does is? He looks to the stands where his mom is. He's got a huge smile on his face because he knows he just did good, really much better than he normally would. And mom is not paying attention. You see, she's a partner in some accounting firm, and she is way too busy to actually watch her son. He's on her laptop and her phone, doing the important stuff. Now, I look back and forth between the mom and the kid, hoping she looks up and at least fakes it that she was paying attention. But unfortunately, she doesn't. That kid, I see his face fall. I can see it from 50 feet plus away. I see it. Mom wasn't even watching. She wasn't paying attention. Pay attention. I don't care what sport your son or daughter is playing. I don't care if it's a game of tiddlywinks. Pay attention. It's the easiest thing a parent can do, but it's really the most important thing a parent can do. Talking about your son playing a sport in college or as a pro, that's silly and meaningless. But paying attention to them when they're young and learning and trying to develop the skills necessary to play whatever sport it is that they enjoy, paying attention is priceless. Now, you might say, well, of course I know that. I always pay attention to my kid. But in reality, that's just not true. The next time you're somewhere and you see a youth sport being played, take a look at how many of the parents are on their cell phones. Now, maybe their child isn't on the field to play at that time, but that's a crappy excuse. You never know when they'll enter the game or when they'll make that great play. And as a parent, you don't want to miss that. And most importantly, You want them, your kid, to know that there's nothing more important to you at that moment than watching them do their thing. Now, the other aspect of paying attention is about safety. The safety of your child when playing sports. Parents need to pay attention to keep their kids safe. When my son was playing pee-wee hockey, it's 11 and 12-year-olds, there was always supposed to be an adult in the locker room when the kids were dressing for practice. The coaches really should be the ones in there. But one year, neither the head coach or assistant coaches were ever in the locker room before or after practice. Now, if you've ever been around 11 and 12-year-old boys, the word knucklehead just jumps out at you. 11 and 12-year-old boys are complete knuckleheads. You do not leave those boys alone in a locker room, with sharpened skates and pucks and hockey sticks and helmets. They basically have everything they need to seriously injure each other long before they ever get on the ice. I made it a point to always be in the locker room until the last kid was done dressing. When it got down to the last kid, I would stand in the doorway, half inside, half outside. And I didn't want to be alone in a locker room with a single child, but I was watching. I won't share some of the really bad things I put a stop to, but kids swinging hockey sticks at each other, grabbing and throwing helmets, the ever-present pushing and shoving matches. Once I had to yell at a kid to stop him from urinating, peeing on the wall of the locker room. Not in a urinal, just right on the wall. 11 and 12-year-old boys in a group playing a rough and tumble sport like ice hockey brings out the animal in them. I'm sure it's the same for football and other sports. Parents need to pay attention to their kids in youth sports to keep them safe. Now, the shenanigans I witnessed is nothing compared to the sexual predators that young athletes are potentially exposed to. If you Google youth sports and sexual predators, the number of hits you'll get is stomach-turning. There was an ice hockey coach in Atlanta that took his own life after he was caught sexually assaulting, I think, a few boys on his team. These are 11 and 12-year-olds. I knew the guy. He tried to recruit my son onto his team because my son was a very strong skater, very capable defenseman. That was a bullet dodged. Thank God my son was happy where he was playing at the time, didn't want to switch teams. Parents need to pay attention all the time. Don't give a pass to any adult. Doesn't matter if it's a parent, a different parent, or a coach. When my son was reffing at 10 years old through, let's say, 15 years old, I was always in the locker room with him and the other referees when they were dressing before the game. I specifically called the head of the reffing association. I let him know that I would be in there. And thankfully, he agreed without hesitation. He agreed that I should be in there. I love youth sports. The benefits are immeasurable. My son is, to a great extent, who he is today because of playing youth sports. Soccer, basketball, football, ice hockey, swim team, mountain bike racing. Raising your son or daughter to be an independent, confident, good decision maker means using whatever tools are available to you to develop the skills your child will need to navigate life as an adult. Youth sports offer you the opportunity to develop their foundation, their strength of mind, strength of body, strength of spirit. Help them stay focused on developing the fundamentals of whatever sport they're playing. And always, always, always pay attention. They won't be kids forever, and you don't want to miss any of it. Thanks for listening.